Oh, I like the song.
Me too.
Yeah.
Hey guys, it is Sam Oser with Status Coup. So, for those of you who do not know, Status Coup is a media news outlet, and we are a progressive media news outlet. We cover a wide range of fascist oppression and people who are fighting it. So, there's two things going on right now. For those of you watching on YouTube, we do have an app. We're on All Real Radio's app. It's a podcast station. For those of you listening on All Real Radio, we are live on YouTube, youtube.com/statusquo. So, today is a fun day. Today in the studio, we have Houston Migrant Outreach Coalition. We have Sandra and Will here representing the coalition. We are going to be talking about a couple of topics here. We're going to be talking about freedom for immigrants, the case for abolishing prisons, detention centers, and abolishing ICE. We're going to be talking about the difference between ICE, CPB, DHS, EOIR, CIS. There's a lot of different agencies. We're going to be talking about the global goal of decriminalizing migration. We are going to be talking about a Clinton-era racist-ass policy, prevention through deterrence policy. And we're also going to go into how this coalition has been working to create visitation programs and hold stakeholder tours. And ICE has been aggressive in gaslighting the ever-living fuck out of these people. Because, of course, they are Nazis and they do not want tours. So, here we go. We're not going to go in any particular order, so just have fun.
Okay.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, so Sandra's been doing a lot of the on-the-ground direct work, so I want to defer as much time as possible to talk to her, but I'll start off just talking a little bit about who we are and what we represent and how we got started. So as Sam, thank you first of all for having us.
Yeah, of course.
You did say that we are the Houston Migrant Outreach Coalition, and how that got started was about a year ago. We were both part of the group Democratic Socialists of America, the Houston chapter, and it was around the time that more people were becoming aware of the family separation policy under Trump that actually got started under Obama, and it was a continuation of the Bush-era policy and so on and so forth. You mentioned Clinton, so it goes a long way back.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, there was a lot of protests going around, there was a lot of actions, activities around the country. Here in Houston, we wanted to know what we could do to stand in solidarity with migrants and do something that would be useful for them, not simply doing protest after protest after protest, nothing gets done. So we thought about groups we could partner with, and one of those we looked at, among all the groups out there that are doing various levels of work with migrants, the one that we looked at and found most aligned with our values as DSA members who look to abolish unjust borders and abolish the entire system of migrant injustice. We found a group out of California called Freedom for Immigrants, and they are a group that's been around for over a decade, doing work in specifically visitation solidarity programs, where they, as a function of wanting to undo the migrant detention system, going to visit people who are detained simply for migration status and witnessing and collecting information and developing programs which they can then take to communities to outline abuses that have gone on behind closed doors inside the facilities because they're very closed off, but then develop outside programs and pressure campaigns to win more concessions and then also develop an overall program to end this whole detention system as a whole. So we partnered with them about a year ago, I believe, or a couple of months ago actually, because when we were trying to do this on our own, in our own capacity, we were getting pushback from not only ICE, but also from the wardens in these private prison facilities. There's two that we were looking at here, the two companies, the main private prison facilities, Geo Group and then Core Civic, which are the major operators of private prisons in this country and are the major operators of migrant detention facilities specifically. So we kept getting pushback, and we found that we needed help. And when we worked with Freedom for Immigrants, they had an infrastructure already ready to go, which we could sort of graft onto this sort of template of developing detention visitation programs. And so Sandra got in touch with them, did a lot of legwork, and that's where we are right now, where we've moved forward with this program of having visitation as a group to go in. There's power in numbers. If we go in as individuals, we don't have the force of a group that is doing this work on the ground every day and has experience in how to get results.
Right.
So I want to, maybe Sandra can talk a little about how we got involved with Coup for Immigrants, that's just a little background, and then, how that developed and where we are now.
I'm like, what can I add to that? I think you pretty much covered everything, huh?
Well, when we got in touch with people for immigrants, what did they have already available for us that we could utilize to help us out? When we were stuck, how did we get to work forward once we got partnered with them?
So it's been over a year. What we started trying to get a visitation programs going in July, I think.
Mm-hmm.
In July, yeah, and I'm not sure how to answer what you, because I feel like I'm just gonna say the same thing over again of like what you already said. Yeah.
Well, when we were getting, I think originally pushback when we were just Migrant Outreach Coalition.
No. So since the very beginning, so I had looked online. I was like, okay, so what group can I find that's gonna actually do something?
Yeah.
And like he said, that aligns with our values.
Yeah.
And so I found Freedom for Immigrants, and I mean their core mission is to end isolation for those that are already in the system,
Mm-hmm.
as well as working towards abolishing prisons and detention centers globally. So it's all like a global connection. And yeah, I think that's probably and so when I had started talking with them, they were like, don't use our name because they do a lot of, pushback in the form of suing ICE, and now in California where they're actually passed a law to close detention centers.
That's good.
Yeah. So the first stakeholder tour we did, they just totally violated ICE national directive, which they're supposed to put out a flyer, because really the whole point of a stakeholder tour is you're going in to actually to talk to the people that are in there. So yeah, you want to see the facility, but the whole point is to talk to them so that you can already start establishing relationships.
Yeah.
And so that first one, the officer took me around the facility. This is so fucked up, because I was talking to him throughout the tour, hey, we want to get this visitation program. It's community members, we're just coming in because we want to end isolation. And he was like, well, the majority of the people we have here are high level security, and they're rad people, and they don't really need anyone to come in to talk to them anyway, because they have a microwave that they can pop. Seriously, he took me to the room where they have the microwave and popcorn. And I was like, okay.
They don't need people. They have a microwave.
Yeah, and the
fine.
popcorn thing was over and over and over again. And so then I was like, well, okay. And he was like, oh, and they have movies to watch, so they don't need anyone else coming in to talk to them. So
they have popcorn and movies. Got it. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so that was the main reasons. But yeah, so he totally violated that. They didn't put up the flyer, so I didn't speak to anyone. So it was kind of just a tour of the facility. So that was really fucked up. Yeah, so that was the first stakeholder tour, and so it kind of stalled for a little bit. We had meetings, and then I was like, well, we can't really do any more meetings because we're not getting in yet. So there's no point in having people come out and we start planning to do that. So it took a while. But then this year, Sophia she was with Grassroots Leadership. She came on board with Freedom for Immigrants. And so she became the connection for Freedom for Immigrants, but for our area, for the southern region. Mm-hmm. And she does not take shit.
That's good.
Any shit. I've been learning so much from her. I'm like, wow. I heard you. And so this time around, yeah, we've been able to like push back and actually like gain like we're in power struggles and we're actually getting them to concede.
You're
some
gaining
power.
ground.
Yeah, so it's actually really good this time around.
So, like, how much paperwork and stuff did you have to do? So, what did the process look like of you gaining ground?
Okay, so like this time around, we had a stakeholder tour at Corley, and that did not go well because, I mean, I think we should just be blunt, right? So we had a stakeholder tour. It was with the ICE agents, deportation officers, and the warden and the assistant warden, and we were like going through the facility, and like the assistant warden was like openly anti. Like I just to say, he's like openly anti-migrant. Like the shit he was saying was like incredibly fucked up. So we went into the kitchen. He was like, "Oh look, you know, we have this great program. You know, people work and they earn. What did he say? Like $1.25 or yeah." And so I was like, okay.
$1.75. That's a great
No, it's like
rate.
$1.25.
$1.25. Okay, cool.
And he was like, but it's because I was like, that's not very much. And he was like, well, but it, you know, it. And so I asked him how many hours they work per day, and he was like, well, they work 8 because you know it matches outside community standards. And then so then I was like, yeah. So I was like, what the fuck? I was like, so then what about the pay? I was like, shouldn't that match?
Shouldn't that match too? Like,
Yeah.
I mean.
And no, he came back with, he was like, oh, well, if you want them to get paid more, then you put the money right here in my hand and you pay for it. And I was like, taxpayers are paying for this anyway, so.
Allocate the money appropriately.
Yeah. So it was like, and then Sophia had brought up, you know, how we wanted to raise like bail funds and money, you know, to like, for commissary.
Mm-hmm.
And this man was like, oh, so you want to raise money for them? What about our families? Our families are needy too. Seriously. It was, yeah, like friction the entire time. And the last time I was there, we had gone in because we thought we were already on someone's visitation list, which is another violation that they had on there.
Mm-hmm.
But he came out and he was like watching me, and then he like followed me out, and I was like, wow, you're trying to intimidate me.
Yeah, so just to be specific, this is for visiting people who are in these concentration camps. I mean, that's what they are, like if we're being in all seriousness. So this is their experience as they're trying to gain ground, visit with people, and also try to figure out like why these people are only getting paid $1.25.
Yeah, wasn't that what it was?
Yeah.
Because I think he said
Right.
national was like 75, and he was like, well, we pay more.
They're being very generous.
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to convey.
We're being generous.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
is.
but we were talking about like concessions. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
So, and then on this last time, because we have a stakeholder tour coming up on Monday.
Yes, you do.
So initially, when I submitted the request, I got completely ignored, which they already know my name at the field office. So it was weeks went by. Finally, you know, I was talking to Sophia. I was like, hey, they're not responding. I've been sending emails about the request, and so they stepped in and did send them a very strong legal letter, like, hey, this is, you know, our right. It is our legal right to have to be allowed in as a community, right, as a stakeholder tour. And if you know you don't grant this, well, then we're just going to take further action. So they immediately responded. The field director, Contreras, and so yeah, he got the ball rolling. I don't know how much shit do I want to talk.
So I would just say, like, this is an ongoing process.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we know that they have control.
Yeah.
ICE has control. They can do whatever they want. They can set the rules and the parameters based on the very, very basics that is outlined by the laws in Congress, or the laws from DHS, from the Department of Homeland Security. So any little infraction, any little reason they can come up with, it's kind of like if you work in an at-will state or right-to-work state, you're basically at will to be fired. You're right to work to be fired. So they are at will to basically decide whether or not we can have this program there. So if they, if, for example, Sandra shows up or I show up and they don't like the way we're dressed or they don't like our hair, they can say that that's something that is going to be interfering with the operations of the center. And if you go to these centers, on the wall for visitors, they have big signs with this long list of requirements for you to be able to go into the facility. Dress, for example. One of the things that we had talked about when we first started this sort of idea of going inside was about solidarity campaigns on the outside for the families. So Sandra had realized or had heard that families, some people were coming to visit family members from miles away for, this would be the only time they could see them in weeks or months, and they would get denied because their clothing didn't match the dress code of the facility. So we had talked about like having like a outside the facilities like clothes, so in case people got denied, they could then change and say, hey, I'm compliant now, let me in. So we, of course, as Sandra says, you don't know how much we want to go into it really because, they may very well pick up on what we say and then say, we heard what you said, therefore we saw that you are hostile to us and we will simply deny you because we have been there.
And they can deny you, but when you put, I think this is the point. So yeah, they totally push back and say no and block you. But when you go in with the legalities of hey, look, let's actually look at what's in the ICE National Directive, then, they're like, oh, okay, well, but yeah, they stall you. And
so basically, when you come in educated with the legal resources and the stuff in your hands and coming up and being like, okay, so I'm going to take 20 minutes to go over why I can and should be in here.
Yeah.
Do you have to do that every single time?
Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of what happened with this stakeholder tour that we have coming up on Monday, and then the following Monday we'll see. So the agent kept saying, I'm not getting the documents. And I'm like, well, I have, so we had to actually get everyone involved. I CC'd the field office director, compliance, community relations, civil rights and civil liberties office. Ended up tagging everyone because I'm like, look, we're submitting the documents and this person is still saying that they're not getting anything. And I'm like, I have the receipts, I can show them to you. And then another one of the issues is they were saying that we have to use a specific stakeholder tour flyer, but it's only in English. So that was another area where I had to push back, hey, look, so let's actually look at the national standards, and the whole supposed, goal of ICE is to make sure that, we're communicating, everyone's communicating freely back and forth. And so I was like, so y'all are actually kind of in violation of that because you're not using bilingual flyers. So how are people going to know that we're going? So there was a lot of back and forth, and finally we did win. They did grant us a stakeholder tour because the decision had been made to cancel our tour. And so yeah, after a bunch of legality stuff, and then Freedom for Immigrants actually stepped in too, which was a huge help. Yeah, so then they were like, oh, okay, well, we'll do the tour. But now we can only do half of the people instead of the whole 18. So yeah, it's always something, always. But I do feel like as long as people stay at it and it's look, this is how you're in violation, and technically as powerful as they try to act, they're not that powerful.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And think about it, we're a group with these resources and experiences behind us. How much more difficult it is for individuals, for family members who are trying to visit loved ones behind them. And it's just multiplied by a number of people who are lost. They just have to accept whatever ICE tells them, and then they're denied. We have been going back, we have been persistent. And like you said, even though we may have the law on our side, we have to appeal at each level because each department may say, well, this is in violation, this is in violation, this is in violation. That's a delay that we then have to go back, research, come back to them and say we were in the right, and then we can get in. Other people, ordinary people, family members, they may not have those resources, especially if they themselves are undocumented. They don't want to cause trouble.
No,
to
yeah,
inmates
definitely
that are
not.
undocumented. So, and I guess you could say in a way that we're utilizing our privileges as citizens or as people who have maybe access to resources, they can push these issues.
Well, yeah, there's a number of privileges at play, right? So, like, for some people, like in the group, there's white privilege, there's class privilege, right? And then there's also the privilege of just speaking English, like, and not sounding like you're speaking the second language. There's a lot of privilege in that. So, yeah, no, I get what you're saying with that. All right, so next up, we're gonna break down what these departments are, right? Because something I run into frequently when I'm talking to people and whatnot, it's well, who's what? Like, how does it fit where? So we're gonna kind of dissect that right now. I'll be looking at a notebook because it's a lot of stuff to remember. And then, like, as I'm going along, if you guys have anything to insert, please do. Okay. So we're going to start with the Department of Homeland Security. They are the umbrella agency, right? So they administer immigration laws, prevent terrorism. I have put those in quotes because, they certainly don't prevent white supremacy terrorism. Securing U.S. borders, responding to natural disasters, and they have other things, but the important thing to know is that they are the large umbrella agency. So under them is CIS. CIS is the Citizenship and Immigration Services. They grant immigration benefits and promote citizenships. So CIS is where you would do petitions, work permits, green cards, naturalization. ICE, our favorite one that we want to abolish. Well, I think we should abolish it all, but that's a topic that we're about to get to. ICE is Immigration Customs Enforcement, responsible for enforcing immigration laws in remaining area of U.S. ICE attorneys represent the U.S. in immigration prosecutions. So what's important to differentiate between ICE and the CBP, Customs Border Protection. Customs Border Protection enforces immigration laws at or near the border. And from what I've read, they can go as far as 99 miles from the border. So CBP is in that area, and ICE is responsible for the rest of the U.S. So when you read these horror stories about some bus getting pulled over in, fucking Ohio, and ICE is there being like, show me your papers, and you're like, why is ICE all the way in Ohio? That's nowhere near the border. Well, that's their jurisdiction. So now that we kind of went through what those were, and one more thing, the Executive Office for Immigration Review, they are not part of the Department of Homeland Security. They don't fall under this umbrella. They are with the Department of Justice. But they are the immigration court system, the Executive Office for Immigration Review, EOIR. They are the immigration court system, part of the Department of Justice. They include immigration judges, Board of Immigration Appeals, and they are the highest administrative body for interpreting and applying immigration laws. So as far as I could gather, based off looking at everything, this group, the Executive Office for Immigration Review, is what we see in the news when we see mass prosecutions, mass trials, right? So there's like 40 children in a fucking room in front of a judge with like one lawyer. These are the people, the Executive Office for Immigration Review, that look at them. Did I miss anything? Is there anything you guys want to add?
So all of these agencies we're talking about had their start after 9/11. They came out as acts of Congress, but they are continuations of a long-standing racist immigration policy. Before them, it was the INS, the Immigration Natural Services, and then before that, it was sort of militias that were hired by local border states to enforce them, such as Rangers, for example. So all of these are continuations of injustices that are enforcing borders, arbitrary borders in many cases, and they're part of, I guess if you want to go down that rabbit hole, a longer settler colonialist project, which is most of what the United States is.
Right.
So when we talk about these particular agencies, when we talk about Abolish, when we talk about CBP, it is not enough to say simply abolish a government agency, because the ideals and the principles of border enforcement are going to continue one way or the other. And border enforcement isn't simply about the protection of individuals or populations or citizens or communities. It's about enforcing very real racist restrictions and violence against people who are fleeing, oftentimes countries that we have a part in creating the violence which they're fleeing. So, for example, Honduras, when the Clinton administration sponsored, not Clinton administration, so the Obama administration who sponsored a coup in Honduras in 2017, which led to an influx of refugees trying to flee that country and come to the United States.
Right.
By the way, Secretary of State was Hillary Clinton at the time. But so these are all policies that don't happen in a vacuum, whether it's the creation of a agency or whether it's the enforcement policies or whether it's the imperialist foreign policy, which is creating crises in countries that cause people to flee in the first place. So when we look at the processing facility, look at near the airport, for example, it's not just people from Central America. It's people from countries like Ghana. It's people from countries like Afghanistan. It's people from war-torn countries where we have had a part in destabilizing those countries. So I always want to, when people talk about abolishing ICE, and I'm all for that, we need to always be thinking about what that means in practice and then what our ultimate goal is. And the ultimate goal is overall to end imperialism and to end the unjust criminalization of migration.
Open borders.
And there we go. Thank you, Sandra.
You want to go more into open borders? Because, I mean, we talked about, like in our topics, decriminalizing migration, so that seems like a natural segue.
Before we go into that, so I wanted to talk, I think, a little bit about, like, why it's important that it's not just about, like, abolishing ICE, right? So we want to abolish ICE, but we also want to abolish Custom Border Patrol, and also DHS, right? So, and, like, I feel like everything is tied together. And then as far as, like, well, so how do we do that? Do we do that first? Or
do we just abolish DHS and then it all crumbles? Like,
yeah. So, I mean, I think about stuff like that all the time. Mm-hmm. It's like, so what point, like, what part are you picking?
Exactly.
And then you think about, okay, so we have then detention centers. So if people are going into detention centers and we want to abolish detention centers, what's going to happen if we abolish those without abolishing prisons? Because we know that a lot of times, migrants are picked up and they're put into the regular system. Mm-hmm. So, right? So if you abolish detention centers, then you're just going to end up probably having all those people go into prisons. So, yeah. So,
I want to kind of jump out of that because, like, another thing that we discussed and we noticed is, like, there's a certain level of, you could say, like, almost abolitionism, like, not in my backyard, mm-hmm. where people don't want a facility in their particular neighborhood or in their city or in the county. And so what happens is it doesn't mean that facility is not going to be built. It means it's not going to be built in their particular neighborhood or community. So if it's not built in Houston, for example, the Emancipation Boulevard Child Detention Center here near downtown, it's going to go way off into a rural county where no one has any oversight over it. No one can do anything. So it's not like we want the facility to be built here because we want it to be built here. It's because we have
more oversight
here than we would have in, say, someplace like Montgomery County up the road in Colorado, where there's and we know this when we go there, there's, like, it's Trump country. It's like there's a lot of people there who welcome and want it there and don't care necessarily about the level of atrocities that are happening inside. So I don't want to say it's good that so for example, Emancipation Boulevard facility is here, but we need to keep in mind that just because it isn't here doesn't mean it's not going to be fixed somewhere else where it's out of sight, out of mind, and therefore people will have less freedom to travel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So like my full-time brain is constantly in marketing, right? And specific like corporate marketing. And when you apply corporate marketing tactics to what you're seeing around you politically, like it's all based on that out of sight, out of mind, right? If you want people to see it, you'll, market the ever loving fuck out of it. But like if you don't want people to see it, you're going to use PR tactics, and that includes location to hide it, and that's just how it goes, unfortunately. Cool. Okay, so let's talk about the prevention through deterrence policy. So the prevention through deterrence policy is a Clinton-era policy. It was drafted by Sandia National Laboratories, a Lockheed Martin subsidiary. It was drafted in 1993 per the White House's request. God, gotta love Bill Clinton. The Clintons. I'm saying that sarcastically. I hate them. So I just want to clarify. Make sure you guys know.
There's no room for the Clintons in this room.
There's no room for the Clintons in this room. So this it was. I just want to repeat. It was drafted by Sandia National Laboratories, a Lockheed Martin subsidiary. So if you're already on the stream, already listening, should be familiar with Lockheed Martin. If not, that's a different rant for a different time. But they are profiteers and they are awful people. So how has that played into the work that you guys are doing? And here we are, 20-something years later, and it's still there. It's gotten worse. So how is this playing into what you guys are doing?
So I actually did not know about it until I went to Tucson. I was there with No More Deaths, No Más Muertes. So they do humanitarian aid in the desert. So they do like water drops and, there's food and providing shelter, right? It's like that's humanitarian aid is a right. It's not illegal. And so that's actually how I found out about that, because Arizona was very, very affected. A lot of the spots where we did do water drops and where they do water drops, because there's more than one location, are sites where people have actually died. Like human remains have been found there, and it's directly due to this policy, because there were already established routes. They were safe routes. And then, Clinton came in and he was like, well, we need to close these safe routes and really push people into the desert is already incredibly dangerous,
right.
But pushing people into these, longer routes and more dangerous routes, and a lot of people have died directly because of that. The way that I think of stuff like that, I think we need to reframe how we talk about these people, because they're murderers, that's how I see them. It's if you're creating a policy or someone's gonna die, or you're making sure to maneuver them into a situation where they're gonna die, then you're a murderer. It doesn't always have to be directly by my hand with a knife. It's
yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Not to get too Marxist, but there's a term for that called social murder, where basically if you're doing a policy, it's going to result in deaths, and yeah, it is murder. It's still murder. And the reason why we're talking now about Clinton, I talked about Obama before, is because it's important to recognize, yes, Republicans are awful, but this is a bipartisan policy of suppressing people. So the term, it was called Operation Gatekeeper. What it was basically a way of closing off those areas, those paths that people use by militarizing the border, sending more and more troops and military where they're as if it's a war zone, and treating these people who are fleeing there as if they are invaders. It
right.
reinforces that mentality. And this also it was in 1994 that this passed, and it was the same time as NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, passed, which decimated much of the rural areas of Mexico by flooding the country with cheap corn from the United States, thus undercutting the ability of people to make a living through corn, traditional corn production in Mexico. So it forced them to flee their country, but at the same time, on the other side, when they got here, they're going to find a military that's going to be greeting them. So, this policy continued, of course, then under Bush, and then it also happened under Obama. And in fact, Obama, when they started to do like child separation policies, they specifically mentioned, in fact, Hillary Clinton, again, specifically mentioned that the reason why they were doing these policies was to act as a deterrent against people coming to this country illegally, as they like to say. So there's plenty of bipartisanship. In fact, just yesterday, I think it was New York Times published and ProPublica published an article about the McKinsey consultant group, which Pete Buttigieg used to work for. And the report, because basically, I think it was the Obama administration had reached out to McKinsey to write a report on how we could more effectively, again, deter people from coming to this country. So McKinsey produced a report which said that we should cut the amount of funds available for food for people and shelter. And even ICE in this report said that that was barbaric and inhumane. And this is, the McKinsey consultant group is considered, fairly moderate, mainstream consultant. This isn't some right-wing think tank here. This is the mainstream of American consultancy, like Lockheed Martin,
like
etc.
Lockheed Martin,
right? So all of these are on board, and we have a major Democratic candidate who worked for that, who's running for office now, who worked for this company. So this is why when people hear us, for example, shit on the Obamas or shit on the Clintons, it's not through anything other than recognition of what they've done and what they continue to do.
I always tell people, particularly like my more liberal centered friends, it's like, I'm not pulling this out of my ass. Like, this is real stuff. And that McKinsey group, like, they're actual Democratic consultants. Like, they help different politicians. They are a PR firm, essentially, like, if you crystallize it. And going back to, like, marketing real quick, marketing is not just used for consumer products. It's also used for politicians, which arguably have become consumer products. So it's just something to just keep in mind that, ICE is using them. Also, was it last year? Was it doing stuff last year? Yeah, last year. Actually, I can't remember it, but there was a Democratic spokesperson who worked with the Clintons during their administration, and they're the spokesperson for Southwest Keys, which is a concentration camp that's here in Houston, but also everywhere else. I have that article somewhere. I don't remember it right now because it's been a hot minute, but that happened too. Like, we have these Democratic PR firms and Democratic consultants working with ICE and with these concentration camps to put out a good PR image. So that's something to keep in mind. In this, right? Orwellian. Where are we? Oh, we're really good on time, guys. So, talking about that. So there's this article that I was looking at yesterday. It was called The Prevention Through Deterrence Strategy, shared by the El Paso shooter and the U.S. Border Patrol. And I wanted to just kind of talk about that for a moment, because the article talks about how the El Paso shooter had a manifesto that said, if we can scare the Hispanics away from here by, shooting them up, it will prevent them from coming. And it connected that recent El Paso shooting to this Clinton-era policy, saying, if we can scare them from coming, they'll be less likely to come. Which, can we take a hot minute, El Paso right-wing manifesto thing connected to Democratic Bill Clinton? If we can scare them, we can keep them away. How fucked up is that? Ooh.
Well, I see, they're kind of like a pendulum, right? So, the Democrats and the Republicans, and it swings back and forth, and it's so when Democrats are like, oh, well, we're going to pass this reform, and it's going to make things better for a few people. And then Republicans come into office and knock it out, and like back and forth. But like ultimately, like the center is still there, right? It's still maintaining the status quo. And I'm not saying like don't vote. Obviously, you should vote, but I mean we need to be realistic about like how the parties work and keep each other really in balance to like still maintain the same bullshit.
To specifically still maintain white supremacist bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? Because we have to recognize our capitalist structure is rooted in white supremacy, and everything that's happening that we're seeing is rooted in white supremacy. So this immigration issue in particular, I don't think we touched on this, is a facet of indigenous genocide. So I know we didn't have that in our list of things to talk about, but I think we went through our topics already.
Oh.
So we want to talk about indigenous genocide. So basically, we are doing a crap ton of terrible shit in South America, in Central America, and all of the coups and destabilization that we're doing is creating an influx of people coming over here. So have you guys seen anything indigenous related in y'all's work related to this?
So most of the kids that I've worked with are indigenous. They speak their indigenous language. Their parents do. And a lot of times, I know there's like warlike situations, but it also has to do with climate changes that are occurring.
Okay.
So that's why some people do leave. But also, like so when I talk about stuff like this, like I feel kind of uncomfortable always making it about, oh, okay, so they're leaving like, war-torn situations or even climate changes, because I feel like it sets up a dynamic of, or I guess it reinforces the dynamic of, oh, okay, so what's a good migrant and what's a bad migrant?
Right.
So if somebody wants to come, they can fucking come, right? Like I don't think it should matter, like what the reasoning is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everybody should just be free to like move up and down. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, when they do flee for a reason, like I totally agree with you. Like anybody should be here for whatever reason you need to, or vice versa. If we wanted to go to another country, etc. But like you were touching on as far as indigenous issues, like this is the United States and other countries. We are all part of this continuum of settler colonialism, where Angela Davis makes these points where after Ferguson, when you look at the people who were the police and the equipment that they were using and the training that they had for dealing with the people who were revolting in Ferguson, they often got training or materials or in some way or another had a connection with the Israeli Defense Forces. So there's a continuum of oppression around the world that we see that's connected that we don't always realize there. And one point I kind of want to go back to is like when we take on this work and we try to do any type of work that is helping people, is not to try and reinforce the institutions that are oppressing people. So it's a delicate balance. If we, like for example, Sandra talked about Democrats who come in and say, let's reform something. Reform can also often mean just simply reinforcing the system and making it, more woke, if you want to put it that way. Like body cams on cops. So when we speak in an abolitionist mindset, we want to talk about how we can effectively abolish the police ever having connection with people, abolish the migrant services from ever touching somebody, with whatever their migrant status is. So we don't want to have woke ICE. We don't want to have woke cop. Mm-hmm. We want to end all of that. So everything that we do in our organizing work has that mindset, has that mentality. Realizing that people are inside, we want to always be thinking about how we're going to end all of this. And never get caught up in the trap of, there's some nice people, there's some nice people. Then once you get trapped into that, you end up becoming a part of that very same system. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how good-minded liberals end up getting involved in that because they start to identify with the system of oppression and injustice. And that's definitely something that when we organize in this capacity and everything that we do, we always want to be wary of that.
I think a lot of that comes back to it's because it doesn't really affect them.
Exactly.
A lot of people, so it's easy to be like, oh, okay. So like when you know the story broke about how in the concentration camps they didn't have like soap and toothbrushes, and so that was like a thing that Democrats were like focusing hardcore on. It's like, yeah, obviously we should, you know, have these things that are better for them while they're being detained or whatever, but ultimately, shouldn't the conversation be about shutting the shit down?
Exactly.
Not just, oh, let's make prisons like nicer, let's give them a blanket. It's like, no, what the fuck?
They shouldn't be in there at all.
Yeah.
Like,
That's why there's like a more toothbrush act or something like that.
And then they're like, oh yay, you know, we got the brushes, the toothbrushes and soap in there, and it's like, okay, but
yeah, that's, well, and like for me, that goes to like basic PR and marketing, right? So like, yay, we got toothbrushes and soap in there. Just focus on this. Don't mind anything else that is happening because, you know, everybody's profiting off of it and we're profiting off of it. So just focus on the toothbrushes. Okay. So yeah,
And even like on the privatization thing, like if we abolish, I think the California bill is actually really good. Like, sometimes people will focus on only the privatization of prisons and forget that if the prisons are then locally based, they will no longer be privately run, they'll be government based. And that's not going to be very much better if, in fact, it's the same situation, just with different owners.
yeah.
yeah, our corporations are the government.
Exactly.
So it wouldn't, yeah, definitely. So we are on the YouTube chat. For those of you listening on All Real Radio, we are live on a live stream on YouTube. For those of you, I guess I should switch the camera to see me. For those of you looking at Status Coup, I'm also talking on a radio app. With that said, any of you guys on YouTube, if you have any questions, please drop some questions in there. Take maybe like 2 because we're running a little short on time. But while the questions go up there, preferably not Bernie questions, because we're not talking about Bernie Sanders. I do like Bernie Sanders, but we're not talking about him. So please keep it, you know, ICE, immigration, these poor people who are in literal concentration camps dying. Cool. So with that said, how can people connect with you while we're waiting for questions?
We have an email, and we have a Facebook page.
Yes.
Yeah, Facebook page and Instagram.
And Instagram.
Yep.
Is it,
Houston Migrant Outreach Coalition. Look us up on Facebook.
Yeah,
Look us up on Instagram. We have a great social media presence on both of those. We update regularly the stories related to migrant issues. In fact, you know, our social media presence there, I learned stuff from that page.
Yeah,
I know, thank you, Yolanda. Shout out to Yolanda.
y'all's Instagram is lit. Like,
Yeah,
I love y'all's Instagram.
Like, she makes stuff. I'm like, oh, like sometimes I see it. I'm like, oh,
Do you want to mention that?
Huh?
Do you want to mention that?
Oh yeah.
So we do have a movie night tonight, which is at Christ the King Church, Lutheran Church in Rice Village area. We're going to be showing a documentary on migrant, you know, people coming here and the experiences they have in various capacities. It's also going to be, you know, it's a fundraiser for an event that we're going to be having there as well. So if people can come out, it's free. You're free to come out tonight at 7 to 9 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's Christ the King Church, Lutheran Church in Rice Village. But yeah, look us up, send us a message. We are pretty good at responses, and we'll be happy to provide you information, especially if you want to know about how you can get involved with actually going in and participating in the visitation program, or, you know, letter writing, whatever you want to do that's going to, you think can help people out, ideas. hit us up, and we'll be happy to get in touch with
But to go back to the fundraiser,
you. Right.
we're raising funds for the Zapatista women. They're holding their Zapatista Women's Gathering at the end of December. And so they've requested pants, blue jeans, beans, rice. So we're raising money for that. And I'm going to be traveling down, so I'll be buying the supplies in probably Mexico City. So we are, that's what the fundraiser is about.
And we do have a GoFundMe for that on our Facebook page. So
Yeah, cash, donate.
Yes, please do.
Cool. Do you guys have, so whenever you guys like have meetings and workshops, you post it on Instagram and Facebook and whatnot?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so we do, like, if people want to get started, we have visitations, like, ready to go. Like, we just need to do, like, a little bit of background so people know what to expect and, you know, like, what our goals are. But yeah, I mean, we need volunteers to go visit.
And as I was mentioning earlier, like there's a United Nations of people who are inside detained. So if you speak another language, a second language, we have people who speak Arabic, French, who are willing to go in. So whatever language you speak, that will help us to, if we connect with somebody who speaks, for example, Hindi or Farsi, that will help us to connect with that person to go in and visit the people. People sometimes think that only Spanish speakers are in detention centers, but there are many people who are caught up in this system from all around the world, all different languages.
Yeah. All right, so we do have two questions. One is there healthcare, which I think that should be our second question. The first question is they requested for us to talk about how I set up a fake university. So we can talk about that, and after we talk about that, we could talk about healthcare, because I actually wanted to end the show with the children who have died under ICE in these concentration camps. And that's going to tie heavily to the lack of healthcare. So, anyway, university.
I believe that was started under the Obama administration. It was sort of a sting operation. ICE set up a fake university, advertised it to people, especially in India, and then when they got over here, they spent so much money to get over here. ICE would then entrap them and say, "We got you, you have to go back." So then they fine them as well. So not only were the people spending money to come here, they then were probably had fines extracted from them in order to be returned back to their country of origin. So all around, just so much foolishness.
But talking about that, so it's not like so it's not always immediate turnaround of being deported.
Yes.
A lot of this is they're catching people specifically to put them into detention centers or prisons to hold them there so that the prison can make money, because you have people that are being held for like, this is not just months, it's like 6 months, a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, with never having seen, a judge, like nothing, like they're trapped in there. At this point, like we have people who are like, I want to get out of here so bad, like they're becoming suicidal, and we are seeing like people kill themselves. And so so it's not just, we're gonna catch you and deport you. It's no, we're catching you to like keep you to make
profit off you.
Yeah.
Capitalism.
So there's no due process at all in detention centers.
It's lawless in many ways. They can do whatever they want. And once they turn them over to the private prison system, the private prison system can like extract their labor. For the 75 cents or $1.25. $1.25, they're generous.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay, is there any other questions?
Oh, but healthcare.
Oh, yes.
So,
yeah.
And this is fucked up. So when we were in Joe Corley, part of the tour was they showed us the solitary confinement area, and then they showed us the medical segregation cells, which are the same fucking thing. It's solitary confinement. And so talking about healthcare, so a lot of these facilities will brag about like having state-of-the-art healthcare and like doctors and all this stuff and equipment. I know Montgomery does that. They brag about that all the time. But like the cells, it is solitary confinement. It's like smaller than this room. It's like maybe half of this. They're kept in there like 23 hours a day. They're supposed to wait in there if they show any signs of illness or if someone says that they're feeling sick. So some of the women that we spoke to at our stakeholders forum, like they were crying because they were afraid to like show any signs of sickness because they were getting thrown into the cell, like in solitary confinement. Because so when you think about healthcare, it's like what exactly do you need? Because yeah. They technically do have healthcare and they technically hire people to perform these services, but they're not actually doing it, right?
It's kind of like we have a dysfunctional healthcare system overall in this country, and you can imagine at that level, it's even more dysfunctional.
It's just, I think it's just on paper to say, well, we have all this.
Like to check off the box.
Check off the box,
Right.
Yeah.
We have bandages.
Yeah. And like someone in the comments on YouTube, they were like, why are you calling concentration camps? Like, is it the Holocaust? Well, I mean, let's take a moment to go back in history and think about Anne Frank, right? So before there were, like the mass actual like gas chambers and whatever shit, Anne Frank died in one of these concentration camps in typhus? Oh, did I say that right? Typhus. She died because she was sick. This week, there was a child, a 16-year-old, named Carlos Gregorio Hernandez Vasquez, that died from the flu. So there are parallels there, and whether you like want to see the parallels or not, it's there. Go through your cycle of denial, whatever shit you got to do emotionally to deal with it, but it's there. So that's why we're calling it concentration.
And specifically, the term concentration camp came about because it literally means concentrating numbers of people into a facility, one facility. That's all it means. It precedes the Holocaust. It came about during the British colonial times when they created these concentration camps to put colonial subjects into one specific area. That's all it means. And like you said, the parallels, though, still exist, though, with the atrocities committed in Holland.
And I mean, these deaths are not anomalies. Like they're not one-offs.
Exactly.
Like they're occurring in all of our facilities. Like at CCA, there's always someone dying in there, and it's like it's in the news for a day, and then everyone's like, oh, okay, well, nothing.
Murders, rapes,
yeah.
deaths, they happen in these facilities right here in Houston.
Yes, the whole point is to like brutalize people in there. It's not just to house them and let them like hang out on a tiny little bed and eat popcorn. So yeah, it is a concentration camp.
Yeah. So we're going to end today's live stream recognizing everyone who has died. Now, there are thousands upon thousands who have died crossing the border, even more that have died with the prevention, deterrence, through deterrence policy. Like I read that they don't even count. Like there's estimates, but there isn't actual records. So just acknowledging them, but then also acknowledging the children that we have accounts for. So as far as I've been able to see on the internet and stuff, there's 8 children who are accounted for with actual names. Does that number sound right? Am I off? Or
Actually, I read an article that since I think December of 18, it's like those are 18 kids?
with their names?
Yeah, because they died in custody.
In custody.
But I mean, that's just an article I read, so it didn't have their names. So
it didn't have their names.
Yeah.
So these are names that I was able to find, and then like if there's other names that come around next time when we talk on this topic, we can definitely acknowledge them.
Could I kind of add something to that?
Yeah, of course.
The people whose names we know, of course, that we can put a name to that. But as we also know, people disappear from these facilities.
Oh, yeah.
There have been mass disappearances of people. And in some cases, they may be released and then they just simply they don't want to be found, so they disappear. But we don't know. We don't know what's happening to these people, and there's no level of accountability that can help us to determine what happened here. So we can highlight the people who we know of and take action on that, but we need to be cognizant that people are vanishing, and this is a very real system that is committing atrocities without us knowing about them. And that's why, through this program, we want to help shine that light where we can and build a case against it. I wanted to go back a little bit to when you talked about grassroots leadership. The organization is based out of Austin, Texas, and they have a history of organizing around various issues of criminal justice, but specifically on migrant justice. They built a campaign over years to shut down a facility in Williamson County that was housing migrants. Now, it is still open, but they were able to get many members of the community in a very Republican area, very conservative area, to come on board with basically de-licensing that facility. ICE was able to find ways around it, but that shows what we can do through this work, is to highlight issues. They used their visitation program to highlight abuses that were going on, rapes, murders that were actually happening behind those doors. And building up a campaign, they were able to get the All-Republican County Commissioner's Court to defund that particular site.
Wow.
As I said, ICE was able to get around that, but that's the battle we have.
Yeah.
So, but we can win these victories, and as we build upon that more and more, hopefully we can have a larger effect.
But to add on that,
Yes.
so what happens is when, say, a county commissioner doesn't have the hold contracts with them anymore,
Yes.
then what happens is ICE then just goes in and does the contract directly with the facility,
Right.
which is even worse because it kind of because the oversight shrinks even more for us to be able to do anything. So that's something we had partnered with grassroots leadership an action like a few weeks ago.
Right.
Because ICE is trying to get 3 10-year contracts with one of the facilities. It's in Houston. It's a CCA facility. And so we're trying to counter that right now.
Oh yeah, I remember y'all posting about that. Like that 10-year contracts aren't normal.
No, that's frightening because that's going to expand. 10 years. Yeah. How do you get that overturned at that point? It's literally it's a contract.
It is set in stone.
So yeah.
So that is the battle. Like every time we win something that we think is a win, it ends up being the way where they recalibrate and they're able to come back and say, well, you know what, can't do this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put a 10-year contract in, so you can't do it for 10 years.
Yeah.
So it's a tough battle. We're up against a lot, but as we build more and more momentum, we can hopefully put it into these.
All right. Well, so all of the children that I have on my list are under 18 years old. There's a 10-year-old Darlene Cristabel Cordal Val, 16 years old Juan de Leon Gutierrez, 7 years old Jacqueline Gal Makin. You might remember her. I remember them doing like altars for her and pictures of what's her name? Maria, the saint, with her in front of it. 8 years old Felipe Gomez Alonso, 2 years old Wilmer Josue Ramirez Vasquez, 16 years old Carlos Hernandez Vasquez, 1 year old Mari Juarez, and the most recent 16-year-old who died from the flu, lack of healthcare, Carlos Gregorio Hernandez Vasquez. So we have to, again, this is why they're called concentration camps. Well, I mean, beside the historical definition that Will gave us, but kids are actually dying in these places, and we really have to acknowledge that.
And stop supporting incremental change because that's bullshit.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think that might be it. Do you guys have anything else to add before I do my end of thing spiel?
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Cool. All Alright, so I don't know if you guys know, but we are doing text message alerts. So if you text Coup, C-O-U-P, to 474747, you'll get breaking news alerts, and I didn't get a live notification for today because I'm still trying to get into the groove of going live on a regular basis. But I encourage you guys to text Coup to 474747. So Jordan and Jen are continuing their efforts with Flint. They have some really good Flint material coming out. So I don't know if you guys have been following, but before they went around and knocked on like 500, 600 doors in Flint last summer. And they put together a piece that got like Rep. Rokana, Susan Sarandon, and other people to call for an investigation into Flint. It also kind of it did corner the governor to admitting some things. And this next round that they are working on is really, really good. I cannot tell you anything. But I do encourage you to go ahead and do the text and follow, so that way when the news is ready to break, you'll be the first ones to hear about it. And then here's our checklist. Like this live stream, if you can, become a Status Coup member. You get some behind-the-scenes content. We do not withhold any news content from you. We just give you behind the scenes. Follow us on Twitter, subscribe to the podcast, join the email list, statuscoup.com. And then you can follow me at Sam the Mullet. That's exactly what it sounds like. Business in the front, party in the back. For those of you who can't see me, I have purple hair, like kind of hidden. So that's like my mullet type thing. It's silly, but I like it. And then for those of you looking at Status Coup, you should follow All Real Radio. All Real Radio is the podcast studio that I'm in, and the app that's people listening to. They have a lot of cool podcasts on there, and you can follow them at All Real Radio. Well, that's all I got for you guys, so toodles.